Great music choice, Casey. I love it. How are you doing? It's good to be back with you here on MAC+JT Wednesday night.
Hang on. There we go. I'm doing great, Jacob. It's been a great weekend. Your Alabama Crimson Tide, great comeback. My Penn State Nittany Lions stink. So I had to make up some other ground, and I just decided that I was going to do a lot of winning in the NFL. So that's what I did.
Yeah, it was a great collegiate weekend for me, but let's not waste any time here. Let's get into the rundown from this past weekend. Casey, we've started off this show the last couple weeks talking about your guy, Desmond Ridder, and I think it's only fair we bring my guy in this week, Sam Howell, as well. Casey, it's a bad time for both of us. I think both these guys might just stink.
Jacob, I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you mean, because I think my guy got his team in a position to win a ball game. I don't know. He's just a winner. He's just a winner. Desmond Ridder. What can I say? Yeah, but besides that game-winning drive, I mean, it's not been pretty. I mean, he was 19 of 25, but no touchdowns. I mean, he's just kind of surviving and advancing. Hopefully that that changes, but I think you might be onto something. These two just might stink.
And it's fun with both those situations, some exciting pieces on both offenses, and you have to think, could the backups get some play? You have Jacoby Brissett, an experienced starter up there in Washington, and Taylor Heineke backing up Desmond Ridder in Atlanta. We know both those guys have been able to lead teams to regular season victories before. You wonder if a quarterback change is in the near future for either of those teams, Casey.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I think Desmond Ridder definitely deserves to get that second look. Sam Howell, I don't know if he's got a fair shot, to be honest with you. I think he puts up a lot of good numbers. I don't know if that's just because they play from behind a lot. I haven't done the deep research into it, but he's also one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the NFL. That doesn't help either. Desmond Ridder, he doesn't have much of an excuse. He's got plenty of weapons. The offensive line is good enough. And yeah, maybe it's time to give Tyler Heineke a look. See what you got there, quarterback.
The biggest headline of this weekend is I think some teams are officially on fraud watch, Casey. We had some of the highest end teams in the entire NFL take embarrassing losses this week. The Dolphins going to Philadelphia, losing to the Eagles in convincing fashion. The Lions getting blown out by the Ravens. And I know the Patriots won against Buffalo on a last-minute drive, but anytime Mac Jones looks that good and you lose to this version of the New England Patriots, I'm going to say it's an ugly loss. So 3 teams with Super Bowl aspirations fall this weekend in ugly fashion. Casey, I know we didn't expect any of these outcomes, much less the fashion in which the other teams won. What do you think about these 3 teams? Are you worried about any of them?
I'll list my worries. My first being number 1, being my most worrisome, the one I'm worried about the most, and then the least worried. Lions, the sirens are blaring right now because it doesn't seem like they've played anyone of note. And when they've played two really good teams, they've not been able to get the job done. And you might even argue that week one, without Kelce and Chris Jones, arguably their second and third best player on the Chiefs team, I mean, they barely were able to beat the Chiefs. So I don't know, Jacob. It's not looking great for the Lions. And then Miami, we could have seen this coming. Like, I've come to the realization that my disdain for the Eagles, or my hesitation with them, is kind of unwarranted. I mean, they're top 10 in like every statistical category, but yet we still think that they can be better. I think it's more just how dominant they were last year, so we have this perception of what they should be, and what they are this year is skewing that. So I'm not super worried about Miami. I think that they're still going to be relatively good in the AFC. I don't know if they're Super Bowl contenders. I don't know if they go far in the AFC, but I'm sure that they'll be okay in the long run. And then the Bills, I think that's just their MO. They win games by a lot, they lose games that they shouldn't lose, and they're just so up and down all season long. You just go look at the years prior, the years that Josh Allen has had. I mean, it's just been so up and down throughout his career. This does not surprise me that they lost a game in this fashion. I think that they'll bounce back.
I would agree, Casey. I know we're going to talk about the 49ers in their upcoming game against the Bengals here in a minute, so I'll leave that one for a second. But I think the Lions are in a very unique situation where we've seen them play. If you want to exclude the Chiefs, I certainly do, without Chris Jones and Travis Kelce. We've seen them play two good teams, and they've lost to both of those teams. Well, the rest of the Lions' schedule is incredibly easy. They don't play another playoff caliber team till the Cowboys, the second to last week of the season. I fully expect them to win a bunch of games, be sitting at the top of the NFC, and then when we get to the playoffs, we'll all remember these blowouts. And just remember to be hesitant about the Lions, even though those numbers might be pretty gaudy at the end of the season. Casey, this last Sunday, the Bengals were sitting at home on the bye, but we still found a way to lose. The AFC North swept, all three teams picking up victories while the Bengals sat idle at 3-3. Certainly nothing changes in the AFC North for the Bengals, but you would have loved to see one or two of those teams pick up a loss while we sat at home.
The Steelers game came down to officiating and the spot of the ball. That was pretty bad. The Browns game, I mean, Irsay already came out and said that the NFL said that they got it wrong. They made the wrong call, caused the Browns to win, Colts to lose. It's unfortunate that things shook out the way that they did, especially the Ravens just blowing out the Lions. Everyone just loved the Lions, loved them at +3, I think, and it just got obliterated. Lamar just had a field day, looks like MVP type caliber play from Lamar. The offense was clicking. It was a bad day for the Bengals, but again, it was a bye week. They didn't technically lose, but they lost a little bit in terms of standings.
For sure. Yep, nothing changes. We knew where we were after the 0-2 start. Got to win the games in front of us. We go to San Francisco this week, take care of business. We're back in the same spot. So nothing new. And speaking of San Francisco, there's some trouble brewing at the Bay. Primetime Kirk and the Minnesota Vikings come in and take care of business, beating the 49ers. Niners lose their second game in a row. Casey, you deemed this team unfair, the best team in the league. Are you pressing the panic button at all? 2 losses in a row?
I am not pressing the panic button yet. I think the injuries kind of derailed some of those games, and again, they missed a field goal that would have made it a only 1-loss team at this current moment. Brock Purdy, though, I think he's been declared out. He is going through concussion protocol. They expect Sam Darnold to play this week, which is a little troublesome for the 49ers. But I'm not worried. This team, what made it so special, what made it so unfair, wasn't really the offense. It was their defense. And I think they did enough just this last game to win a ball game. They got to get more from their offense, and I think that'll happen too. The 49ers, they're still unfair. That defensive front is just so hard to stop. It's so hard to manage. I think it was a one-off for the entire season that they don't get a single sack in a game.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. Look, I don't think there's any one thing that makes this 49ers offense go. I know the injuries to Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams weigh heavy, and Brock Purdy missing this week might prove to be more significant than I think it will be. But look, I've said for a long time that you can plug and play any quarterback in that system, and Brandon Ayuk is a hell of a receiver, and George Kittle's no slouch at tight end. So, look, I think Sam Darnold's going to take the reins, and that thing's going to look completely fine this week. And then after the Bengals game, you get Deebo Samuel back in that offense. Hopefully, Trent Williams continues to get healthy. You saw Christian McCaffrey scored 2 touchdowns after being limited in practice most of the week. Before that last game, he seems to be completely fine. Yeah, I'm not worried about the 49ers at all.
But speaking of quarterbacks, we've got some quarterback controversies, and some of them kind of jokes, some of them not so much jokes. What are your thoughts?
We'll let you decide.
Yeah, we'll let the chat decide, because I think the Justin Fields Tyson Bagent, is it Bagent?
I believe Bagent, but I could be wrong.
Tyson Bagent gets a win in Chicago. The first time they've had a win in, I think, a year or something like that, a year and a half.
They beat the Commanders, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago on Thursday Night Football. But before that one, yes, you're right.
At home, right?
Oh, correct. Yes.
Yeah, it was the first time they had won at home in a very long time. And it's at the heels of Tyson Bagent having his, I guess, come out party. Division II quarterback from, I don't even know what college, I can't remember, but it's a Division II school. And he led that Bears team to a victory. And then on top of that, we've got Tyrod Taylor. He's still kicking in the NFL. He was able to get the Giants a victory as well. A very ugly victory, but a victory nonetheless. And then Deshaun Watson and PJ Walker. What are your thoughts on these quarterback controversies, Jacob?
Obviously, the last one you threw in there, Deshaun Watson and PJ Walker, is a slight joke. But look, PJ Walker has won 2 games in a row. I know the 49ers are a missed field goal away from taking that one from the Browns, and Deshaun Watson started this game. But PJ Walker has looked very good in that offense, and he looks comfortable at the helm. Deshaun Watson didn't practice today. It seems like he's taking the millionaire's approach of just playing when he wants to. So it might be PJ Walker again this week, even though there's no reported injuries for Deshaun. Just a peculiar situation going on up there in Cleveland. The Tyrod Taylor and Daniel Jones question seems a little more simple to me. The Giants are one miraculous half against the Cardinals away from being winless at this point in the season. And then Tyrod Taylor comes in and you're a missed pass interference away from beating the Bills. And then he goes out there and wins against the Commanders this last week. Seems pretty clear to me that Tyrod Taylor makes that offense work a little bit better in New York. And I know Daniel Jones is supposed to be back this week, but I would maybe tell your franchise quarterback to take a little bit more time and get healthy so Tyrod could get him a couple more games under his belt.
Yeah, and then, I was too lazy. I'm gonna move on to the next point, if that's okay with you. I was too lazy, and I thought it was just kind of clever to just put a Taylor Swift joke in hyphens. Kelce and Mohomes, they roll the Chargers. Those two are probably the best duo in our lifetime that we've ever seen at the high level that they've been at for as long as they've been together. It's been, 6 years with that duo together, and they just continue to wow, put you at awe, and destroy the AFC West. They cannot stop this duo.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. There's nothing like it in the league. We like to debate pass-catching quarterback duos, and we always just go straight to wide receivers so we don't have to worry about the Mahomes-Kelce part of the conversation. Well, they are distantly the best in the league, and we sit here every week, just like everyone else on every other talk show, talk about the horrible Kansas City receiving core. Well, guys, it doesn't matter. The receiving core doesn't matter. They have Travis Kelce, and they're going to throw him the ball 15 times. He had 9 catches for over 150 yards this last week. That's just absolutely insane for a tight end position. I see Mark Fetters in the chat. No Taylor Swift talk, please. Well, guys, this is also a betting show, and we like to help you guys out, as much as we can. It's important to find out when Taylor Swift is going to these games because Travis Kelce's numbers are bigger across the board. Yards, touchdowns, receptions, yards per catch, everything. Travis Kelce plays better when she's in attendance. So hunt those prop lines when you see Taylor Swift going to the games.
Absolutely. That's just a really funny stat that you pulled there. But it's true. Taylor Swift makes him play better. Likes to play for a girl. What can we say? And that concludes our rundown of week 7, right? We're past week 7 now. We're on to week 8. And we're going to start game 1. Bengals versus 49ers. And I'm going to do something new. It's not really completely new for the chat. But I'm going to put the line, the Bengals versus 49ers. I'm going to put it as a poll. And I want the chat to give us their picks for every game that we do. And we're going to keep track of how well the chat does as time goes on.
I love it, Casey, because we know we're two sharps here on screen. Let's see if the chat has the big football brains just like we do. Getting into this game, it's the first time this year that the Bengals have been part of the marquee game of the week. This is clearly the best matchup on Sunday. Bengals, 49ers, two Super Bowl favorites, two Super Bowl powerhouse or perennial powerhouses in the current stage of the NFL. We all hope that bye week was everything it needed to be and more for the Bengals and their offense. Joe Burrow said today that he's healthy and that there's no more excuses when it comes to his calf. And look, I think that's exactly right. Those last 2 weeks before the bye, Joe looked much, much better, even though it was just in flashes here or there the first half of the last game against the Seahawks before the bye. I really think this offense is going to take off. I know we play the 49ers, a very, very tough defense, but I really expect the bye to be the end-all to the offensive woes, and we're going to come out, and this thing's going to start to look like we expect it to look.
Yeah, and one thing that's really important to remember, too, is that we're getting some health back, right? It's not just Joe Burrow that's not healthy. It was Orlando Brown Jr. He was dealing with a groin issue. We were dealing with T. Higgins and his rib issue. He's gotten another week's rest on that rib. And then Awuzie, he hadn't been completely himself. He hadn't been all the way back yet. He was dealing with some sort of back injury, a little different than the ACL that he tore. But, yeah, I mean, this team, I think, really needed the bye week, which is crazy to think because I was kind of disappointed where we got the bye week because usually you want it deeper into the season. But we needed it. We needed to get healthy. We needed to reset after starting 3-3. And the Bengals right now are in a really good spot to change the narrative. And it starts with the two guys, Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase. Ja'Marr Chase, dude, he is just a beast. He is phenomenal. And I think we all know that. Everyone here in this chat knows that Ja'Marr Chase probably, arguably, could be the number one receiver in the NFL at this current moment. And they are playing Tre'Davious Ward, which I don't know if you remember this, Jacob, but back in 2021, when Ja'Marr Chase went up against Tre'Davious Ward, man on man, not in Kansas City, but in Cincinnati, when they were playing Kansas City, he went off. 267 yards, 3 touchdowns, 11 receptions. And did you see how bad Tre'Davious Ward played against the Vikings and Jordan Addison? Jordan Addison is no Ja'Marr Chase. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. We've seen what Jamar's been able to do against seemingly any corner that's not in that upper echelon of the league. When he's playing against guys like a Tre'Davious Ward, he tends to get his. And I certainly expect that to be the case again on Sunday. We saw going into the bye that the Bengals seem to have really turned the page on getting Ja'Marr Chase the ball, really getting him as the focal point of the offense and running it through him, 14, 15 catches going into the bye. Just unbelievable. That's exactly what we need to do with Jamar Chase. That's the kind of weapon he is. You see other teams like the 49ers with Deebo Samuel, a very similar build, a very similar receiver. They force him the ball sometimes, and that's not a bad word. Sometimes, people turn their nose up at forcing players the ball. Well, they're star players for a reason, and your team does better when they have the ball in their hands, and we need to force the ball to Jamar Chase, and I hope we continue to do that. Another key piece to this offense, Casey, though, is Joe Mixon. And on a per carry basis, he's been pretty good this year, but he just doesn't have the volume and he's not getting that sustained production that we really need out of the running back position. Casey, what do you expect from Joe Mixon, not really just this week, but for the rest of the season?
Well, what's really important for Joe is that we are attempting, and this is reported by Charlie Goldsmith just this afternoon, that we're going to be under center a little bit more going forward. And I think that's going to be a big key, a big part of Joe Mixon and how he plays the rest of the season. If we are able to do enough and succeed in under center, I expect Joe Mixon to have a pretty good rest of the season. I expect him to get still to that 1,000-yard rushing mark. I know he's at like 360 or 380, I believe. And he's at 3.8 yards a carry, so he's got 366 yards this season. I think he can get to that 1,000-yard mark easy, as long as we can get the push that we need from the offensive line, under center, be able to have a power run game, some sort of gap scheme that really allows him to run downhill and not have to take something out of the backfield in shotgun. I really like Joe Mixon's season ahead of him. I really do.
I agree. I said coming into this year, I know we all kind of expected the offensive line to play a little bit better than they have so far, but I said coming into this year that it's the best offensive line that Joe Mixon's had in his career, and I expected him to have a career year. Well, that hasn't really been the case yet through 7 weeks, but he has plenty of time to turn it around. We're not even halfway through the year. I really do think he's going to flip the switch and go back to the Joe Mixon of old that we all we're so excited to have back when he restructured that contract earlier this summer. The thing we saw this last weekend was something that was entirely unique. The Vikings somewhat, exposing the 49ers defense. I don't want to say exposed because it's not a bad unit. I don't think that's something that we're going to come to expect. But the Vikings threw the ball 40 times against the 49ers. Is that the recipe for beating this team? Are the Bengals going to have to do something similar? I know we just talked about the importance of establishing the run with Joe Mixon, maybe getting under center and getting a power run game going. Maybe the way to beat this 49ers defense is over the top, throwing the ball 40, 50 times a game. And if Joe Burrow is truly healthy, let's take the top off and really test those corners.
Yeah, I mean, I think a part of me wants to say that's not the answer because of how much I respect their defensive front. I mean, it is elite. Nick Bosa against the Bengals, I just feel like that's a really bad matchup for the Bengals to start throwing the ball a lot. Now, Kirk Cousins was able to throw 45 times, 0 sacks. I don't think the Bengals can do that. The other part of this equation, though, is the Vikings, they weren't really efficient in the run game. They were stuffed for the most part. That was something that the 49ers attempted to thwart. They were 21 of 74 for 3.5 yards a carry. If the Bengals are able to see light boxes, there is a chance that we could be balanced. But if they decide to have the same game plan that they had against the Vikings with us, the Bengals, I think that the Bengals could just throw all day. If it's Tre'Davious Ward man-on-man against Jamar Chase, it's not going to be pretty. I mean, they're going to be throwing that deep fade route, back shoulder throws all day. I mean, it's not a good matchup for them. So it's going to really depend on how well we're protecting Joe Burrow. And if you go back to 2021, that's the most recent time that the Bengals have faced the 49ers. Joe Burrow, I mean, he led his team down to, I think, tie or get them ahead, and then they gave up that final drive I think it was Debo scores at the end or Ayuk around on a jet sweep. That was a close game, and a lot of it was due because they gave the keys to Joe Burrow. And they let him start slinging that ball around. They let him start maneuvering around the pocket, creating just magical plays. I don't know if you remember Jamar Chase. I think it was his first touchdown that game. Joe Burrow's running around, avoiding pressure, throws it to the right side of the end zone. If you're looking at it from, if you're just watching a game, he throws it to the right end zone, and Jamar Chase just barely gets it in there. That's what I expect from the Bengals this week. They got to let Joe Burrow cook, and he's healthy. Let him maneuver the pocket, let Jamar Chase do his thing, and they'll be good. They'll succeed.
I think when it comes to the Bengals' offensive game plan this weekend, it's pretty simple. I think you're right, too. One that's run heavy and one that's pass heavy. You go into the game and you see what they give you. It's a very talented defense. If they're going to stack the box and not allow you to run, I don't think the week the Bengals turn around their lackluster rushing attack is against this 49ers front. I hate to break it to you, but that's not going to be the team anyone goes off on running the ball, and it's definitely not going to be a flip-the-switch game. So I do think a lot of the weight is going to fall on Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase's shoulders. Hopefully T. Higgins truly is healthy. I fully expect us to, if we don't throw the ball 40 times, it'll be in the high 30s. It'll get close. I think that's how we're going to be able to beat this 49ers team. And like you said, when you started there, it all comes down to the offensive line. If we can't protect Joe Burrow, then there's no reason to even fly out to San Francisco. There's no way we're going to win this game. He needs to have time in the pocket, and he's going to need to be able to find our playmakers, and then we can go to San Francisco and leave with a win. But if that's not the case, we'll be an unhappy fan base here again next Wednesday night. Casey, Brock Purdy out for the 49ers, but nothing really changes for the Bengals defense. This front seven has been one of the most underrated in the league so far, but they've really struggled against the run. I know those numbers are a little bit lopsided starting the year against the Browns and the Ravens, who kind of had their way with the team, and even the Titans there a couple weeks ago. This front seven's really shown me some stuff to have some faith in them that they're going to turn this around and really believe in this defense going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you were watching today on Off the Bench with Charlie Goldsmith, I believe Tom brought up the difference in what the key could have been for our defense. What it truly, what the problem really was. And I think it was a lot of Lou Anarumo didn't know what he had fully. He was doing a lot of testing, a lot of blitzes that we're not normally used to seeing, a lot of different looks. It was a lot of development for Dax Hill starting, a lot of development for Nick Scott starting, and I mean, even some of the cornerback play, it wasn't the greatest the first 4 weeks of the season. However, I think now they've got their groove. I think now they know what they have. And I think from here on out, we'll see what our defense normally is, what Lou Anarumo is able to do with these guys, which is play really good, solid defense, a really good run-stopping defense, average to above average in the coverage department, and be very efficient. Get off the field on third down. I think those are all things that we should come to expect. And to be honest with you, Jacob, we haven't really seen the front four with Hubbard, Ridder, Hill, and Hendrickson stay healthy for an entire season. Usually one of those guys gets hurt. Ridder's out for a couple weeks. Hendrickson's out, or he's not playing at full strength with a wrist injury. We got a calf injury for Hubbard. BJ Hill's probably the most consistent out of those guys, but I believe he's had some nagging injuries before as well. When this team is all clicking, at least in the front four, you see what happens with Seattle. You see what happens with the Rams. They just get after you. So the offensive line for the 49ers is a little bit more stout, a little bit more cohesive. But I expect Trey Hendrickson to get a sack. I expect DJ Reader to be disruptive, stop the runs. I expect all these things from our defense because those are all stars. Those are all guys that should be making plays this season. I think the defense has finally turned the corner.
I totally agree. And the one thing that has really vaulted them around that corner is Trey Hendrickson. Look, we all know in Cincinnati how great he's been since signing with the team. That signing was blown up as being an overpay and such a horrendous contract. Well, it couldn't be anything further from the truth. Trey Hendrickson tied for fourth in the NFL with 7 sacks already through 7 weeks. Remember, one of those being a bye, just 2 sacks off the lead, 1 sack behind TJ Watt, who everyone calls the best defensive player in the league. Look, Casey, I think Trey Hendrickson's starting to get some of the respect he deserves. He's been doing this year in and year out. I know we talked about it the last time we talked about the Bengals, but I love seeing Trey Hendrickson get his flowers because he truly is in that top echelon of edge rushers in the league. He's with those Myles Garrett's, TJ Watts, Max Crosby's, all those elite pass rushers. Trey Hendrickson does the same stuff. He has the same pressure numbers. He has the same sack numbers over the last few years. Over his time in Cincinnati, he's been truly unbelievable. And it's really doing wonders for the rest of the defense. Sam Hubbard, 3 sacks already this season. We've never seen him really get after the quarterback the way he has to start this year. And I think a lot of that comes with the respect 91 is getting on the opposite side. Look, offenses are losing sleep at night planning on playing Trey Hendrickson, and that didn't used to be the case. So now Sam Hubbard gets to let loose. You pointed out the guys in the middle, DJ Reader, BJ Hill, been making noise with interior pressure the last couple of weeks, especially against Seattle, icing that game. I really like this defensive front with those front 4, and they're going to definitely make a difference, especially with Brock Purdy out and presumably Sam Darnold at the helm for the 49ers.
Yeah, and I'm going to go a little off here. I know we've kind of gone back and forth between talking 49ers and Bengals, but someone mentioned in the chat that the Titans were on a fire sale. And I'm just very curious because we didn't really write anything about this and about the trade deadline because we know Bengals probably won't trade for anyone. 49ers probably not in a position to trade anyone, probably trade someone away, but that ain't going to happen. Someone said Derrick Henry. To me, that doesn't make sense. You know what makes sense?
For who?
For the Bengals.
The Bengals?
For the Bengals.
Oh, God, no.
You know what makes sense? Jeffrey Simmons makes a whole lot of sense in Cincinnati. And let me tell you why. If they think that they can make a Super Bowl push with Jeffrey Simmons in the interior, adding a guy that's like a Geno Atkins type player, along with DJ Reader, Trey Hendrickson, and Sam Hubbard, and then if they do make that push, let's say they win it or they don't win it, DJ Reader is probably not going to get re-signed anyways. He's getting into his 30s as a nose tackle. At some point, they're going to have to start looking elsewhere. Jeffrey Simmons, although he's a 3-tech, BJ Hill and Josh Tupou and the rest of those guys play pretty solid football in the interior. I think, for me, I like the idea of getting Jeffrey Simmons on the Bengals, if that is at all a possibility. I know they just signed him to a contract, so it's very unlikely that that happens. But if I were to add anyone from the Titans, it would be Jeffrey Simmons. What are your thoughts, Jacob?
Yeah, if the Bengals traded for Jeffrey Simmons, I would be irate. I think that'd be an absolutely horrendous move. A 4-year, $95 million contract on the defense is just not what this team needs. Look, we've been able to build this defense with budget players because we spend on the offense. You cannot have $100 million players on the defense or pay guys on the offense. I think that'd be a terrible move for the team we've built in Cincinnati.
Well, what if because that money, obviously that he's going to be here. If you were to do that, he's going to be here.
This is also just not a conversation worth having. It's a 26-year-old defensive end on the Titans that they signed this offseason to a 5-year extension. There's a 0% chance any team would trade someone that they just made one of the highest paid edge rushers or 3-techs in all of football for anything short of, I would assume, high draft capital. And I wouldn't give up a first-round pick for a $100 million 3-tech, even if the Titans would pick up the phone, and I would not expect them to.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to know what your thoughts were because for me, that money that you're talking about, it's going to be you're already losing Reader. You're gonna probably lose Awuzie anyways. That makes up for it, in my opinion. That money that you're paying those guys is already going to be paid to Jeffrey Simmons. I mean, they've already paid him the huge signing bonus. That $100 million is not going to be as big of a hit. So for me, that's why I say that. I get your point because the trade is probably going to be too much. But if you're going to go all in, if you're going to try to do something that's just like this is going to put us over the top, it makes sense if you're going to do Jeffrey Simmons, in my opinion. But moving on from that, I think we have exhausted the Bengals talk, and we probably have exhausted the Bengals trade talk. Do you have any thoughts before we round up this game about the 49ers? Because we talked about it a little bit earlier when we were doing the weekend rundown about if we're worried about the 49ers or not. I'm not too worried about this team. But the Brock Purdy concussion is a big deal for this game. It is a big deal. I think Sam Darnold is significantly worse than Brock Purdy in what regard is just being a more consistent player, keeping it out of harm's way. I think Sam Darnold is going to turn the ball over quite a bit. Brock Purdy wasn't going to turn the ball over a whole lot. I know he turned it over 2 times just this last week, but that's not his MO. That's not what he is consistently. Sam Darnold will turn the ball over consistently for that 49ers group.
Yeah, Brock Purdy won't turn the ball over unless you need him to lead a game-winning drive right at the end of the game. I think Brock Purdy being out is a big nothing burger for the 49ers offense. Look, I don't think he's a very good quarterback, and we've seen it the last 2 weeks. This is no surprise. I've been on the same side of the fence with Brock Purdy all year long. I think Sam Darnold's going to come in and this thing's going to look just fine. I think he's going to throw for, mid 200s in yards, probably a touchdown or two, and keep the Niners right in this thing with that vaunted defense and elite weapons. CMC looked healthy last week, even though he was limited in practice. Debo, not going to play this week. Trent Williams, haven't heard one way or the other, but he was certainly trending towards not playing as of last week. Going to need Brandon Ayuk to step up again. He had a good game. Going to need more out of him if they want to beat the Cincinnati Bengals. I do not expect this to be a low-scoring game. I think there's going to be some points on the board. Yeah, I really do think this 49ers offense is going to be just fine without Brock Purdy.
The one thing I will say about Brandon Ayuk was it seemed like he was fed the ball early, very early in that game, and then he just kind of disappeared towards the end of that ball game. I don't know if that was by design, if they thought that maybe they should look out elsewhere for targets. If they want a chance at winning that ball game, they need to get Ayuk more looks. I mean, he's proven that he can be a number 1 receiver. Debo's out. Kittle's great. So's Christian McCaffrey. But you can't just completely ignore the receiver position altogether. You got to get Ayuk the ball. So that would be my key for them is to find ways to get Ayuk the ball. You already know you're going to get Christian McCaffrey going in some capacity, whether that's in the pass or the run game. And Kittle over the middle. My dad and I have a funny little bit that we do. It just always seems like the tight end's always open over the middle against the Bengals. Not as of late. Pratt and Wilson have done a great job, but it's Kittle. I mean, he's going to find ways to just burn you over the middle one way or another. But, yeah, we've already talked about some of the points here about the 49ers defense. We'll move on to that. Tre'Davious Ward and Jamar Chase, that's a matchup to look out for. The defensive line, incredible. It always will be. Very uncharacteristic of them to not get a sack last week. I don't expect that to continue. I'm sure they're going to be fired up looking to create havoc after being shut out completely. I'm not looking forward to that as a Bengals fan. But Fred Warner, I think he is just... If there is any player that was talked about so much but not enough, it's Fred Warner to me. The dude is literally all over the field at all times. He's always near the ball. And I just don't know how he does it. He's always got his hand or his helmet or his pads on the ball somewhere. He's always making a tackle. He's always doing something. What do you think about Fred Warner?
Yeah, my take for a long time has been that Travis Kelce has the biggest separation between himself and the number 2 tight end of any position group in the league. Well, I think number 2 is Fred Warner and the next middle linebacker. I think Fred Warner is so distantly better than anyone else that we see playing the linebacker position in the NFL right now. If you play defense or played defense at any point in time in your life and you want to watch someone really understand the game and call it like a quarterback on the middle of that side of the ball, watch Fred Warner. It's truly masterful what he's able to do. And like Casey said, if you watch 54, the ball is not far behind. Sideline to sideline, hash to hash, that man is always in the mix, always creating chaos and making some noise. I love Fred Warner. He got shaken up pretty bad, screaming on the field this last game, and then 4 plays later, he's back in there. And that's just the kind of guy he is. He's just an absolute gamer and one of the best in the league. He is what makes that defense go. I know there's some bigger names and some bigger contracts, but Fred Warner is a really, really special piece of that defense.
Agreed. And I wanted to point out something really quickly in the chat because I think this is an important point to bring up. Colton, one of our members of Nutcutter Nation, says, really hope a Bengals tight end shows up. TJ ate them up on Monday. It's one area where I didn't really consider thinking about too much because it's so unknown right now. Irv Smith potentially might not even be starting. Tanner Hudson might get the nod. There's talks about that. Tanner Hudson had some flashes. I don't know if anyone's going to be a TJ Hawkinson. He's a great tight end. But that is one area that maybe they can exploit some way without there being a lot of film for Tanner Hudson if he does indeed start. And the slow start that Irv Smith has had, we'll see. We'll see about that. Jacob.
Yeah, Colton's absolutely right. That's a great point. But one thing I would say really quick to be careful with on guys such as TJ Hawkinson when looking at matchups for tight ends, that's an outlier. Guys like TJ Hawkinson, Travis Kelce, the George Kittles of the world, those guys don't lend themselves to traditional matchups. They're scheming them open. It's not just traditional route concepts where TJ Hawkinson's getting open. He's, with Justin Jefferson out, probably the number 1 receiver in terms of targeted, calling plays for someone in that offense. So it might not have been as dominant of a tight end game as you might have think. It might have just been a dominant TJ Hawkinson game, which he's capable of.
That's true. That's fair. That's a fair point as well. Let's talk about picks. The Bengals are -3.5. The chat has the Bengals at 85%, so that's a clear favoritism of the Bengals here. What are your thoughts, Jacob?
I love the hook. 3.5. I'll take the plus any day of the week. Give me the whole field goal. I'm taking it with a smile on my face. I'm going to be hard-pressed to bet against the Bengals at any point the rest of this season. 3-3 coming out of the bye. Not every game's a must-win, but look, every game's a must-win. So I'm probably going to be betting on that striped B every single Wednesday here on out.
Yeah, I'm picking the Bengals. I was going to pick them at 6.5, to be honest with you. I mean, that's gold. That was a golden opportunity.
I was so happy when it was 6.5.
I wish I would have jumped on it when it was 6.5. Now it's at 3.5 with Brock Purdy. I like it a lot still. That hook is perfect. Perfect for me. So we all pick Bengals. I'm going to mark it down here, and I'll keep track of it going forward. Let's move on to the Bears versus Chargers. Somewhat of a kind of a stink fest, but it is prime time, and it is a little interesting because the quarterback controversy with the Bears, a team that many people thought were going to be much improved, started off really slow, really bad. And as the week's gone on, the team has started to really kind of find its groove for the Bears, started to lay out the blueprint and what it takes to win ball games for them. And then the Chargers. The Chargers are just a mystery to me. I don't understand because my disdain for Justin Herbert isn't his ability to actually make throws. He's a guy that is got all the physical talent in the world, and he can make any throw. But when it comes down to nut cutting time, it just seems like he always seems to fail, especially against teams that are really good. Jacob, what are your initial thoughts on this game?
I think this game's going to be an absolute stinker. If it wasn't in prime time, I don't think I would have watched it. When we get into let's just get right into the Bears offense, because what I expect from the Bears offense goes into why I expect this game to be such a stinker. The blueprint's been made for them to win football games, and it's running the ball, and I think they're going to do that a lot on Sunday. The Bears pounded the ball with Donta Foreman 3 touchdowns last week. In his return from IR, I believe he was activated a few weeks ago, but that was the first time we saw him in real lead back fashion. And he had a great game with Tyson Bagent back at the helm. I expect him to have another 20 plus carry game, running the ball 40 something times and just draining the clock. I don't even know if the Chargers offense is going to have the ball enough to really make this game a blowout. I think the Bears are just going to pound this thing out and stick around until the end with that new running formula they have.
Yeah, I mean, I think they found something, right? And they actually have the depth. The Bears have the depth at running back, surprisingly, out of all things, to really start something good there for them. If they find an identity, I think that's been their whole problem is they haven't had an identity yet this season. If they really sit down and look at their roster and their construction, they got Khalil Herbert, Donta Foreman, Roshan Johnson, even Darrington Evans has had some carries too, and then Justin Fields. Those 5 alone can really add some dynamic run mixing plays that can then open it up for the receiving game and the pass game. Honestly, they should just model after the Ravens. If they just do exactly what the Ravens do and have attention to detail, that's very key. They have to be very detailed in the run game. But they're able to do that. I think the sky's the limit for the offense. I think what we've seen and the talent that's there, that it's very capable. They're very capable of moving the ball. And they're very capable of scoring. We've seen them put up 40-point games. Like, this offense isn't completely anemic. But it's going to have to take some realization of what you are. You're not going to be the Chiefs. You're not going to throw it for 35, 40 times a game. You're going to probably throw it 20 times a game, and you're going to run the ball a good 35 times. And probably 5 to 10 of those rushes are going to be a Justin Fields designed quarterback rush.
Yeah, and this week, obviously, no Justin Fields quite yet. But with Tyson Bagent playing quarterback for the Bears, I think the do or die point for this coaching staff needs to be not asking him to do too much. I know he got his first win last week, and you might think, hey, the running game's going well. Let's start to open this playbook up. Let him start to air this thing out a little bit. Caution. I think that would be a really bad idea. I think it's really important to keep this thing as simple as possible. Handoffs, one read pass plays, just dink and dunk your way down the field. Like I said earlier, drain that clock, keep the ball out of Justin Herbert's hands, and I think the Bears can stick around in this game. On defense, the last 3 weeks, the Bears have held opponents 20, 19, and 13 points. They have a winning record, 2-1 through that stretch. Casey, I love what I've seen from this unit recently. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it is almost a 180 from what they were the first 3 weeks. And I mean, it was abysmal. I sat down and watched them play against the Bucks, and I was just completely blown away with how poor the defense played. I mean, they were just letting receivers just run right past them. They were just blowing assignments one after the other. It's really turned around. I think that they have figured out what works for them and what doesn't work. And yeah, some of those games, they're against opponents that aren't the greatest. But, man, that secondary, that's a bit of a bright spot. I like Jaquan Brisker and I like Jalen Johnson. I think their linebackers are pretty darn good. T.J. Edwards, Tremaine Edmonds. Those guys are just good enough to make a difference for this team. They're not going to beat you by getting to the quarterback often, but they don't give up a lot of rushing yards. Right now, the secondary is kind of coming into its own. I like where they're heading. I don't think they're world beaters. I don't think they're probably even average, but they're getting to that point. They're getting to that average point. I think the biggest key for them, though, the biggest thing that's changed for them is limiting the big mistakes, the just boneheaded mistakes, the breakdown in coverage, the letting the guy get around the edge, just forgetting your responsibilities. Those things have gotten tidied up. They're starting to figure it out, and that's very encouraging for their defense going forward, long term.
Yeah, it's an incredibly young unit. The guys you named, Jaquan Brisker, Jalen Johnson, still on their rookie contracts in the secondary. Kyler Gordon, the guy they drafted last year out of Washington, their slot corner, his second year in the league. And then the linebackers, big money free agents this year. So they might not be young and experienced, but they're young in the system. And I think that's what we saw the first 3 weeks. They really had those big mistake plays. They were beat over the top for chunk plays. They had big runs with missed tackles. And I think that just comes from inexperience. As they've started to play together and mesh together as a unit, they've looked much better these last 3 weeks. I know the schedule hasn't been the best, but these guys on the other side of the ball are getting paid too. And holding NFL teams below 3 touchdowns under that 20-point mark, that's really impressive stuff, and that'll win you a lot of games in the league, regardless of who's on the other side. So if they can hold down this Chargers offense, I really, really do think the Bears can make this a game. But as we get into the Chargers offense, we know that the Bears defense might not have to do a whole lot because the Chargers offense is not scared to beat themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I have it written down here, Jacob. The most mysterious and inconsistent group that I've probably ever witnessed. And it starts with Herbert's ability to be a very good quarterback, but then when it matters, just fall flat on your face. And it just seems like, and this is not really backed up with any data or science, because the data tells you that he's actually pretty good in the fourth quarter. But when it's a game that matters, when it's a team that's really good, he just does not perform well. Which in this case is good because they're playing the Bears, so he should be able to throw all over them. But the loss to Mike Williams, I think, was a lot bigger than many people realized. They don't have a second guy in that receiving core right now. They just have a bunch of other threes, and Quentin Johnston, I don't know where he's at. He's just completely gone. The tight ends, they're not going to really fill in that role for Mike Williams, and that just leaves Keenan Allen to do all the heavy lifting. And yeah, Keenan Allen's great. I think he's a top 10 receiver, but it's too easy nowadays to just double up a guy and call it a day. And I think they really struggle right now. And just this last couple games that they've played, I mean, they shut down Eckler. I think they know that the offense really, at this current moment, without that dynamic passing attack, runs through Eckler. And if you can shut down Eckler in that rush attack, if you can shut him down in the flats, this team really struggles on offense. And I hate to say it, but Justin Herbert likes to dink and dunk a lot in these wins that he has. I mean, he gives the ball to Eckler quite a bit, and he does a lot with it. Eckler's a great running back, but when you key in on him and you shut that down, you see what happens. You see that they can only score 17 points. I think 2 weeks in a row, right? I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, 17 2 weeks in a row. A loss to Dallas 20-17 and then 31-17 this week in Kansas City. Casey, you touched on how big that Mike Williams injury has been for this Chargers offense. He goes down in their win against Minnesota in week 3. Who do you think would take up that load? Well, maybe their first-round receiver, Quentin Johnston. You mentioned his name, TCU, playoff superstar last year. Since Mike Williams got hurt out for the year with an ACL injury against Minnesota, Quentin Johnson has been targeted 7 times with only 2 grabs in those 3 games since. I mean, that is just unbelievable. I'm not even going to say that's misuse, like we've been saying with other rookies not getting touches, such as Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm going to put this on Quentin Johnson's shoulders. Look, the Chargers very clearly need help at receiver. They need another pass catcher next to Keenan Allen because he is playing unbelievably at his old age, but he can't do it all on his own. Quentin Johnson, I'm sure they've asked him to step up. It seems like he might just be incapable.
Yeah, and I just want to point this out too, just because I have the stats pulled up here. Keenan Allen has 64 targets this season. Joshua Palmer has 35. That's the second closest. Guess who the third receiver is leading in targets? The third receiver in this team. And keep in mind, Mike Williams, he got injured, week 2 of the NFL season?
3, yes.
Mike Williams is the third leading receiver in targets at 26. That is bad. That is just almost unexcusable. I mean, what are we doing? Who else on this offense is going to step up?
No, and we thought it would be Austin Eckler when he came back from his injury. They've been feeding him the ball. He's been getting those touches. But look, this last game, Josh Kelly busted a 50-yard rushing touchdown to open up the scoring, and that was more yards than Austin Eckler had all day. 14 carries for 44 yards. He just has not been that effective since he came back from injury, and I understand that they need to keep giving him the ball, and they're going to keep giving him the ball, but he needs to turn this around.
Yeah, they got to do something in this offense to turn it around. Maybe, just maybe, they go under center a little bit more and just lean on it more. That could be something. They like to play out a shotgun quite a bit, just like the Bengals do. But also at the same time, what doesn't help them in their case on offense is having a defense that is just as undisciplined as they are inept in the offense. The defense, I believe I looked this up, they are in the top 5 in penalties this season. They haven't even played the same amount of games as everyone else in the league. They're 3-3? Or no, they're 2-4, I'm sorry. The Chargers are 2-4 this season. They have a great pass rush. Khalil Mack, fantastic. But Nick Bosa, where is he at? What is he doing? Because what I see, and I know this is just stat watching, I haven't really dived deep into the film, but Joey Bosa this season has 3 sacks and he has 9 total tackles to his name. He's played in 5 games and he has 9 total tackles this season and 3 sacks. What are we doing? And then you look at some of the other guys that were really high on early on in the season. Tui Tupolu, I think that's his name. I totally butchered it. He had 2 sacks, I think, the first week of the season, or the first 2 weeks of the season. He's just disappeared. He hasn't gotten a sack since. He only has 21 tackles. It just feels like this team...
He's 21 tackles?
Yeah, well, total. Assists and solos.
Yeah, rookie this year. He's been playing unbelievably.
Yeah, he's great. But not getting enough pressure. This team really needs to get home, I feel like, to be very effective on defense because of the way that they like to play their corners and safeties. They like to play Derwin James a lot in the box. They like to get him to be effective in the run game. And I feel like they just, like I said, the undisciplined work that they put on the field doesn't help in that situation. And I don't think they are doing great in the turnover category either. They're not getting a whole lot of turnovers. So it just, all in all, they're just struggling right now. As a whole team, they're all struggling right now to do what they want to do on offense and on defense. And you've seen it. You've seen it on the field so far. They're 2-4.
Yeah, they're the only secondary in the league averaging or allowing over 8 yards per attempt. I mean, that is just ridiculous numbers throwing the ball, and the Bears just can't do that. So maybe the Chargers are going to be all right defensively this weekend. The other thing that we saw in Tyson Bagent's first game was the Raiders only getting 3 quarterback hits. Look, this is a D2 quarterback who has never played in environments like this until now. You're only getting 3 hits on him. 2 of those resulted in sacks. Just unbelievable lack of pressure. If the Chargers can flip the page on that and get some consistent pressure on Tyson Bagent and the Bears, I think he'll get flustered early and they could open this thing up a little bit. Casey, if you have nothing else, I'm just going to get straight to the picks here. And like I laid out when we got right into the Bears offense, I think they're going to really pound the ball. And I'm taking the plus 8.5 because the Chargers just are not going to have enough possessions to really open up a big lead.
Yeah, I'm never betting the Chargers. That's just simple as that. 8.5. It's a little worrisome because you think, why is it that high? 8.5? Are we serious? I mean, the two teams are really struggling right now. 8.5 seems really high for the Chargers, but I just won't do it. I'm not going to bet the Chargers, even though it makes sense to bet them with that high of a number. Vegas must see something. They must see something. But the chat, I think you guys are also betting the Bears. We're all betting the Bears today. Seems like we're all in agreement how this season is going for the Chargers. I'm going to write it down here.
Casey, I have one question for you before we move on.
Yep.
What do you think this spread would look like if Justin Fields was playing quarterback for the Bears?
It would probably be 4.5, 5.
I was going to say 4.5, 5.5. Yeah, I think he's worth about a field goal, which is pretty interesting considering a lot of the conversation going on about their quarterback room. I know we led our show with it.
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of funny that we're even bringing up Tyson Bagent as like a quarterback like controversy. I mean, he won a game against a really bad Raiders team. I mean, the Raiders didn't even have a quarterback for most of that game. But
speaking of the Raiders and their lack of quarterback, let's get into the Raiders-Lions game on Monday night. Lions 8-point favorites. They're just big ol' spread. Raiders last week, just laid another egg. This team is really starting to take the cake for me. One of the most upsetting teams, one of the most hard-to-watch teams in the entire league. Brian Hoyer at the helm last week seems like he's going to be playing quarterback again this week. It's not the preseason anymore, said Josh McDaniels on why he didn't start Aiden O'Connell. But Casey, don't you think you should play your young guys instead of Brian Hoyer when your season's already in the dumpster? Let's start to evaluate some guys. Let's see some things.
Yeah, I mean, I think the logic there is not flawed if your other guy that you're starting is not is he 38 years old, 39-year-old backup quarterback at that? So it's a little strange. I think you should definitely play the guys, your young guys, just to see what you have. And to be honest, Jacob, I mean, they're 3-4. It's not like they are. It's not like they're out of anything yet. Like I know it's the Lions, and the Lions have been really good, but they're on our fraud watch. I mean, they could sneak a win from them, and we wouldn't be completely surprised. I mean, I'd be a little shocked. But the Raiders, to me, they are capable, and I know that they haven't quite shown it against some of the good teams, but they are capable of scoring a lot of points. They got Devontae Adams. They got Josh Jacobs. If that rookie quarterback started to find a groove with that offense, you could see some sparks, you could see some flames, and that's all you need to start winning some ball games in the NFL. I don't think 2 games is enough to fully evaluate Aiden O'Connell. I'll put it like that.
Yeah, and he looked great in the preseason. I know we've seen some preseason studs fizzle out when they've gotten their regular season chance, but I really do like Aiden O'Connell and what we saw from him in the brief regular season action we did see. But outside of the quarterback position, look, we don't know what we're going to get from that. So let's just honestly ignore it. And what we need to talk about is what's going on in that receiver room. Devontae Adams leads the team in catches and targets. I understand that. But when the push comes to shove and you're in high leverage situations, why does it seem like the ball keeps going to Jacoby Myers? Is Jacoby Myers the true wide receiver 1? I was going to say in Oakland, in Las Vegas. I mean, he has put together a phenomenal season as the wide receiver 2 on paper out there in Vegas. And Devontae Adams has voiced his displeasure with how much the ball is going to Jacoby Myers. Is this a yay, Jacoby Myers, a boo, Devontae Adams, or just pointing to the offense for bad management of one of the game's greatest stars?
I mean, to be fair, Devontae Adams has 71 targets on the season. Jacoby Myers has 56. I just
I know.
I mean, like I don't think it's I get the sentiment because you're a really bad football team that you want to just feed your best players. You want to just target them as much as you can because they're going to try to make something happen. For me, it's not even that necessarily. Like I get his frustrations, but the rest of the team, they're they're really not great on offense. Michael Mayer comes in at number 4 in targets with 15. 15. Jacob, like, they only have Josh Jacobs, Jacoby Myers, and Devontae. That's it. That's all they got. So, yeah, Jacoby Myers is getting the ball a lot because those are the only 3 guys doing anything right now. Like, I don't get why Devontae's frustrated. Maybe, like you said, it's just because it's that game decision play. It's that game potential winner of a throw and catch, or it's a 4th down play or a 3rd down that they really need. And Devontae's not getting a look. I don't know. I haven't looked at the film to really even know if, like, maybe he's being double teamed. I know he's being double teamed, but is he really being, like, triple teamed on these situations and just giving it to Jacoby? I don't know. The numbers suggest that he's getting the ball plenty. I don't know. I think the issues really lie with just the quarterback play. The quarterback play has not been great this season, even with
The other
Jimmy
thing
G.
that's the other thing that's really killing that Raiders offense is Josh Jacobs, last year's leading rusher. Nothing similar to that this year. He has been one of the biggest letdowns in fantasy football for sure, in the real NFL, absolutely as well. Just not at all what we expected from a near 2,000-yard rusher last season, Josh Jacobs. He needs to get that thing going in the backfield to take some of the pressure off Brian Hoyer and Aiden O'Connell. And even when Jimmy G gets back, we know what Jimmy G is. He's a great game manager who can get elite weapons and an elite defense all the way down the line to the Super Bowl. Well, look, the Raiders don't have that. And especially if they don't have a running attack and if they can't get the ball to anyone other than 2 receivers and 15 targets to a rookie tight end. Josh Jacobs needs to get the run game going because those lack of weapons on the outside are really going to get exposed if he continues to be shut down in the running attack.
Yeah, and it's not even like, Josh Jacobs is having a down season, not just even last year where he had 1,600 yards. I mean, the years prior where he had 1,000-yard rushing seasons, I mean, he was averaging 4.8, 3.9, 4, 4.9. It's a 2.9 this season. It's not great. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if it's that teams are just stacking the box now and the quarterbacks are just not good enough to get the balls to the receivers, but something's got to change for the Raiders to start making a push on offense. But they're going to have a really tall task against the Lions defense, who looked really, 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 really bad against the Ravens. But if you take that one game out of the equation, they were a top 10 defense. They were shutting down guys in the run game, in the pass game. And with a team that's really struggling on offense going up against a defense like that, it's not a good recipe. Not a good recipe.
No, not at all. I mean, we know what happened this last weekend against the Ravens. Ugly, as you said. But look, like we said weeks before, this Lions defense has been one of the more surprising groups of the season. Aiden Hutchinson has really carved out a role for himself as an elite pass rusher in the NFL, getting consistent pressure off that edge. And then their young secondary, even though they are banged up, have been playing much better again, with the exception of last week. And I think we're going to find out what this Lions team is really made of this week, coming off their first real test. Look, exposure in the national spotlight. That's one of the marquee games of the last weekend against the Ravens. Two teams with Super Bowl aspirations, two teams at the top of their conference. Everyone was watching that game, and it was over before it even started. The Lions were down 28-0 before they got their first down. They need to bounce back this week. I could see this thing spiraling and getting really out of control for the Lions if they were to say drop this game this week against the Raiders, which I don't see happening. But a loss like that last week can break some teams. So we'll see what Man Campbell, Jared Goff, and the rest of the leaders over there in Detroit can rally the troops and get them going for a big win against the Raiders this week.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the Lions on offense, they need to get a run game going if they want to be able to start doing some winning again. If they don't run the football, it just seems like this team really struggles. They can't afford to give Goff 45 attempts, 50 attempts a game and expect to come out of that game with a win. It's just simple as that. Jared Goff is a limited quarterback, and he's in a really great roster. He plays really great at home. All these equations fit into why they lost against the Ravens. The Raiders are a different animal. They should be able to do what they want to do at will. This defense, you have one thing listed here, and I know it's probably because of time, but it makes a lot of sense because Max Crosby is the only thing that's good about this defense. It's just simple as that. Everything else is below average. Everything else is just like, you could do whatever you want at will with this Raiders team. Simple as that. As simple as that, Jacob. And I just think the Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs, I think he's gonna start again. So can we see a little bit of a different run to receiving balance there? Can we see maybe like 15 to 17 touches in the run game, and then let's see like 5 to 6 receiving touches for Jahmyr Gibbs? Kind of flip those numbers around that he had against the Ravens, and see what you get, because I think Jahmyr Gibbs is a elite talent. I think he's a phenomenal talent. He should be able to do what he wants in the run game.
I totally agree on his talent level. We've talked about Jahmyr Gibbs ad nauseum on this program, and we finally saw it this last week. 11 rushes, 9 catches, 20 total targets, just over 140 yards total. And Casey, I would disagree with you on your opinion there, giving him more runs. I think 11 carries between the tackles is perfect for a guy that's just over 200 pounds listed weight. They bumped those numbers up. He's a 5'9", small, slim running back. They did not ever draft him with the intentions of him being a between the tackles runner. That's why they have a guy like David Montgomery. I think the 11 carries, 10 catches, 20 touch zone is perfect for Jahmyr to keep him healthy and hopefully establish a role as the third down back when David Montgomery comes back here in a week or two.
I guess that's a fair assessment. He's a smaller back. I think that you can do more things than run in between the tackles. Like, you can get him out in space in the run game. And to be fair, I did not watch the Ravens game, so I don't know what those targets really looked like. They could have been extensions of the run game, as we like to call it, where they're getting him out into the flat really quickly, just like a swing pass, and it could be screens, things of that nature, where he's still very effective, practically a run. I don't know. I just think that he should get more involved. I mean, 20 touches is still, in my opinion, probably not enough for what this team likes to do. They like to feature Amon-Ra, St. Brown, Sam Laporta, and then Jahmyr Gibbs should be at that 25 touches a game sort of level at the current moment without David Montgomery around.
Yeah, I like it. I certainly agree. I would love to get him more involved in the pass catching game. Someone I like in his usage too is Alvin Kamara. You see him getting double digit catches every game and never really getting above that 13 to 15 carry mark to keep him fresh. I think that's a perfect comparison for where I think Jahmyr Gibbs can really see the most statistical success in Detroit. You touched on Amon-Ra, and he's certainly a top tier receiver and cementing himself as such in the league this season. But the wide receiver 2 position is poking its head out and becoming a really ugly problem up there in Detroit. The Marvin Jones situation, very weird, stepping away from the team for personal reasons and then releasing him hours later. Not Jameer, sorry. Um, Jamison Williams had a streak ball this last week that hit him in the face. It bounced off his face mask. You can't have guys dropping open streaks that are perfectly placed. Doesn't seem like something a wide receiver two would do to me. And I know you like Josh Reynolds quite a bit, but I just don't see him as the wide receiver two on a championship caliber team. Casey, we talked about trades with the Bengals. Do you think the Lions are interested in trading for a receiver at all?
Ooh. Interesting thought. I don't know if they're ready to do that yet because they invested so much in Jameson. I think Jameson is just figuring it out. I don't think he's going to be dropping too many of those balls moving forward. Um, I think, too, Sam Laporta is the clear number two. But at the receiver position, yes, there is a glaring hole. I mean, Josh Reynolds and Khalif Raymond are just not going to cut it. Not against the good NFL teams in the league. I think they're fine against average to below average teams, but when you start getting those elite defenses in front of you, it's just not going to cut it. You're going to need someone else that's a little bit more dynamic. They might be in the talks for trade. I don't know. It's an interesting thought. I'm assuming you're kind of giving a nod at maybe a T. Higgins trade.
I think it's definitely one to keep an eye on. I don't know if T. Higgins is necessarily one that I even think is on the market from the Bengals, but the Lions are a team that would certainly be interested, I think, in that big body outside receiver, and they have the draft capital and stuff that would be necessary to move and get a guy like T. Higgins. So this would be one team, if the Bengals were to make him available, that I would fully expect to call.
Yeah, that I think it would be a perfect fit, to be honest with you. Um, That'd be a very interesting sight to see T. Higgins in a what is it? A sky blue uniform,
Blue and gray, baby.
blue and gray, going from one cat to the other cat. But yeah, the last thing that we have to talk about this Lions team is their defense, and it was a little shocking to see how poor they played against the Ravens. I think it was a bit of a wake up call. I think the hype surrounding them definitely got brought back down to earth. But the team is still intact in terms of what made them good. Aiden Hutchinson, still an elite edge rusher. The front seven, still pretty good. They can get after the quarterback. I think those guys are capable of shutting down the run. I think the Lamar Jackson game was just, it's Lamar. They're not prepping for him every single year like the Bengals are, or the Browns or the Steelers. It's a team that you see once every 4 years maybe, and it just got out of hand. It got ugly really fast, and Lamar was making throws that he hadn't really made all year. So I'm giving them a lot of excuses. I'm not too concerned about the defense. I think it's all still intact. What made them really good the last 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Lamar Jackson has dominated the NFC since he came into the league. You touched on it with preparation there. The AFC teams just see him so much more often, especially in division. And a player as dynamic as Lamar gives anyone troubles on just 1 week of preparation that you might not have ever seen before, since we know how young that Lions coaching staff is. I think they're going to bounce back just fine. The Ravens offense, one of the best in the leagues, seems to really be hitting their stride right now, and they took advantage of a really banged up group. This Lions team is going to be getting healthier in the secondary as the season goes on. And if we get to the playoffs and they make a deep run, maybe even getting Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back in the back half of the playoffs, who knows what to expect from this defense going forward. Like I said earlier, a loss like that could cause everything to unravel. But if anyone can keep it together and get their boys motivated for a bounce back week, I think it's Dan Campbell. And I fully expect the Lions to do that this week. And Casey, that 8 is not scaring me at all. I'm going to take the Lions -8.
The Lions -8, and guess what? I'm also taking the Lions -8. I don't trust the Raiders one bit. I feel like they're starting to look even more inept than they were at the start of the season, and that's just due to quarterback play. Until they get Jimmy G back, I'm not comfortable with this team. and I was never really comfortable with them to begin with. So, yeah, Lions going with them -8. Looks like the chat is also favoring the Lions. It's actually pretty close though, 57-43. I'm gonna write it down here though.
Three
So
games, three sweeps, complete agreement from Casey, myself, and the chat. Casey, I certainly didn't expect that.
Yeah, I didn't expect it either, to be honest with you. We'll all know how we did here next week for sure.
We're all in the same boat, right?
We're all in the same boat. Oh,
Well, finally, our last game of the day, Thursday Night Football coming to you tomorrow. Buccaneers versus the Bills. Casey, we're going to start with the Buccaneers because I want to start with the Buccaneers because they got us. They got us good. They tricked us. We thought the Bucs might be an all right team. We thought Baker was going to be a pesky quarterback and keep them in the hunt. Well, that is not the case. Buccaneers stink. I'm done pretending like they don't. Baker threw the ball 40 times again this weekend. And you wonder why. Why do we keep putting the ball in his hands 40 plus times a game? Well, it's because Rachaad White is getting 3 yards per carry. Another 13 carry game for 34 yards. The one silver lining with this Buccaneers offense is that Mike Evans still's got it. He's the oldest wide receiver out there, and he's good for, it seems like, a touchdown every other week. And if I had to guess, he's going to get another 1,000-yard season and keep that record-breaking Hall of Fame career, that streak alive. Casey, I just do not think this Buccaneers offense is going to get any better, and I certainly expect it to get worse as this season progresses.
Yeah, when I was doing research for this team, Jacob, because I was doing some research for some bets that we're going to display here later, the team has faced a lot of really good defenses, a lot of good ones. The Eagles, the Saints, the Lions, the Falcons, all very, very talented defenses, top 10 defenses. And then the Bears, Vikings, they're in the top 10 in rush defense, which is potentially why they have struggled so much in the run game. The Bills are a little bit different. They are dealing with some injuries that can allow them to possibly start running the ball. The Bills are giving up 123 yards on the ground. I think that there's potential there. I think that the Bucs' philosophy, though, is to throw, and I just don't get it. I don't understand. I understand from the fact that they've got the same receivers that they did with Tom Brady. But those two guys have to be able to catch the ball. And Baker Mayfield is not – he's not going to be able to distribute at a high level. He needs a run game, I feel like, to really help support him, get some play action, allow him to be able to suck in the defense and then throw it over the top. I think that's what he really wants to do. And they're just not going to be able to do that at a high enough level if they can't get Rachaad White going. And let me tell you, Rachaad White, Keyshawn Vaughn, those guys, they don't wow you. They really miss Chase Edmonds. And Chase Edmonds, I mean, he's not been available for them, and it's really hurt them in the long run.
Yeah, that backfield, it seems like Rachaad White has a stranglehold in that running back one position, and I seem to ask myself every week, how bad are these other guys? Sean Tucker from Syracuse, you have Keyshawn Vaughn from Vanderbilt. College running backs we've seen over the last couple of years really put on impressive seasons, and they just get no play while Rachaad White continues to muster up just over 3 yards per carry. I don't get it. That seems like something I would look to change up, but I know Rachaad White does provide some sense of familiarity as he's been there for 2 years as the starting back, and also that receiving threat out of the backfield. So maybe he is just that much better than the other backs they have. But Casey, on the other side of the ball, it gets a little bit better. They're a pretty solid defensive team. They don't have any star players on their team. I know Levante David's getting up there in age, but this team's pretty good defensively. They're top 10 against the run, but then you look at their secondary and they're 27th against the pass. And that is certainly not a recipe to have a good game against the Buffalo Bills.
part of that is because they can't get to the passer. They're not creating a whole lot of pressure at the current moment. I think that could change. They're got the same pretty much defense as they've had the last couple of seasons. A lot of the same guys up front. I think they can get pressure. We'll see. I mean, it's kind of surprising that they haven't been able to get a lot of pressure, and we'll get into some of the props later. But the Bucs defense, man, against receiver ones, they're giving up 100 plus games, 100 plus receiving yards a lot of the time. Majority of the time, there's a guy that they allow a ton of yards to. And quite frankly, you're going up against a Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs duo that lives and breathes off of defenses like this. And I think Stephon Diggs is going to have just a field day with this team, to be all honest with you. I don't like their chances against the Bills. This defense, man. I mean, any team that loses to the Falcons, and it's gonna be a little bit of a bit from me. Any team that loses to this Falcons team, that they're outscored by the Falcons, is pretty sad. It's pretty sad that they weren't able to put any more points. They weren't able to stop them enough. And, 16 points is enough to win any ball game, but I guess that just goes to show you how poor this offense is, how poorly they operate. They have
Go ahead.
They have a really tough test against the Bills.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was just getting into. It doesn't get any easier this week. The Bills coming off a really bad outing, losing to the Patriots, divisional rival. Look, at the end of the day, Josh Allen is just careless. That man just throws the ball up, runs in circles, tries to find his guy, has blind faith in his receivers, and I think it's starting to come back to bite him. Since he entered the league, he has the most touchdowns out of any quarterback, but he also has the most interceptions. And at some point, that's going to be something that holds this Bills team back. You talked about how the Bucs allow a lot of receiving yards to wide receiver ones, and especially those big-name superstar receivers. Well, here come the Bills with Stephon Diggs, and the Bills are not shy about how they want to run this offense. There's not a great run game with James Cook and Damian Harris. They run this offense through Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs has the wide receiver 2 in fantasy right now. I believe he leads the NFL in targets and is third in receptions. Just an unbelievable start to the year for Stephon Diggs. And I think it's time we start the conversation, Casey. Is Stephon Diggs a top 5 receiver in the NFL? I certainly think he is.
I didn't know that was a debate. Yeah.
They had him 7 this morning on ESPN when I was working on the pregame, and it made me a little bit upset, so I thought I'd ask the question.
7? So Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown,
Devontae Adams.
Okay.
CeeDee Lamb.
Well,
They had CeeDee Lamb 6 and Stephon Diggs 7. That's why I wanted to ask the question. Just see where you're at. Seems like we agree.
Stephon Diggs is better than CeeDee Lamb. So top 6.
I certainly agree. I think Stephon Diggs this season in a vacuum might be a top 2 receiver with Tyreek Hill. I mean, just unbelievable production with really no consistent number 2, and that gets even worse this week. Dawson Knox injured in practice. It seems like he is going to miss the rest of the year. We talked about it with the Chargers. Their star goes down. They have a rookie to replace him, and it's not going well. Can this be different in Buffalo? Dawson Knox out for the year. First-round pick Dalton Kincaid, tight end out of Utah. Can he slide in and take some of the weight off Gabe Davis's shoulders and be a legitimate number 3? I don't even think we're going to ask him to be a number 2 receiver in the offense, but I think anywhere from 5 to 7 targets, get a couple catches in there, get upward 40 to 50 yards, I think is exactly what you can expect out of Dalton Kincaid this weekend. I think he's going to play a big role in the offense.
I'm just looking at the numbers now. Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid, they pretty much shared the target load. Dawson Knox had 28 targets. Kincaid had 27. Kincaid actually caught the ball 25 times compared to Dawson Knox 15. So maybe there is an uptick in production at the tight end spot just because you're getting fresher there, you're getting a little younger there, and maybe a little bit more explosive. Kincaid is a receiving threat. He's not much of a blocker, so to speak. So I think there's a good chance that he can take the load off of Gabe and Stephon Diggs. He can get more opportunities. But that leads into the question, are we going to see the run game just kind of disappear? Which that's a little concerning. I don't want to see James Cook just fall off the planet. That's going to be very important for them to continue to stay balanced. They've kind of gotten away from it the last couple weeks. Um, it's really important that they continue to feed James Cook as much as they can while they're dealing with this uncertainty in the pass game.
I think the Bills have a little bit of a predicament on their hands with James Cook at the running back position. I think James Cook is a special young back when he has the ball in his hands. I think he's great in the receiving game. But in all honesty, I feel like James Cook is a change of pace back in the NFL. I think he's a great running back too, a great third down back. I think they need to find a workhorse because James Cook getting 20 carries a game is just not going to net you the production between the tackles that you really need. They certainly wanted Damian Harris to be that. He's been pushed all the way to the back of the bench, and Latavius Murray getting all their goal line and pass pro snaps now at the running back position. He's the oldest running back in the league. So if that tells you anything, that tells you that the Bills need an answer with a big physical running back. Something to look forward to as the trade deadline looms. I know a lot of teams are talking about the Bengals in the hunt for an additional running back. I think the Bills are a team to keep an eye out for as well. Moving on to their defense, it's just so hard to talk about this Bills defense because they just got Von Miller back and they were putting up some really impressive numbers going over to London a couple weeks ago. Well, then Matt Milano out for the year. Tre'Davious White had surgery last week. He's out for the rest of the year. This Bills defense is not going to get any of their banged up players back anytime soon. I think this thing might get worse before it gets better. We saw Mac Jones look as good as he's looked in a long time against this Bills defense last week. And the way some even worse defenses have made him look before in his career, that's not a great sign. If this is what it's going to look like here on out with some of those injuries, I don't know that the Bills are going to be in the hunt for the Super Bowl much longer.
Right, I have to agree with you. And part of it too, they've lost a couple D linemen like Ed Oliver. I think Rousseau was out a couple of games, not out of games, but he played, got hurt, sat the rest of the games, stuff like that could really affect their pass rush, which, in all honesty, is what makes that defense really a threat. And I think Von Miller too. He's kind of getting back into the game. Von Miller's old. He's 34 and a, he's getting older. He's 34 and a half. I don't know. Maybe this is the downswing. This is the downtrend of this defense being elite like it's been in the past. But they still got Micah Hyde. They still got Jordan Poyer. Those two safety tandems are some of the best in the league. It's hard for me to see them not have some success against this Buccaneers offense. But again, they let Mac Jones get 29 points. It's just hard to tell what this defense really is at this moment.
I certainly don't want to bet on the Buccaneers, but 8.5 points is getting up there to a point where I feel like I might have to. Under this game on our notes page here, I wrote, I have no idea, because I really have no idea. I mean, picking the Bills, if we did money lines, would be easy as it gets, but 8.5 points in a primetime game is just way too many. I'm going to take the Buccaneers. What I've seen from the Bills the last 2 weeks just does not show me that they can really blow a team out and keep them down and pull away. So I think the Bucs stick around long enough to make this competitive and cover the 8.5.
Jacob, I have to agree with you, but not only just because of the things that you just said, but I don't know if you're familiar with our system here at Chatterbox. The Bucs are a system play, so it's a good thing for the Bucs. Usually when it's a system play, it gets close. These games Not close in terms of your bet, but the games end up being close. They end up being a really good game. So hopefully we see a really good game this upcoming Thursday. Let's get into. Oh, wait a minute. Let me see what the chat picked. The chat picked the Bills. The
The
Bills.
first dissenting opinion of the evening on the last game. I wouldn't have it any other way. When the Bucks win outright, Casey and I will come back next Wednesday to dance on all of your graves. On to the prop bets for Thursday night. I talked about the Dawson Knox injury, talked about Dalton Kincaid coming out of Utah, the rookie, and his receiving production already this season. Well, that receiving line is just 40. 40 plus receiving yards for Dalton Kincaid seems like easy money to me. It's minus 130, so you got a little juice there. But I'm not going to let you down. I got something else for you to take care of that juice if you're a little uncomfortable. And that's a Khalil Shakur anytime touchdown. That's plus 700. He's their wide receiver 3 on their depth chart. With Dawson Knox out, there's one other option if it doesn't go to Kincaid. It's Khalil Shakur. They're either going to use the tight end the way they've used the tight end before, or they go to more 3 wide receiver sets and they space the ball out. I think Khalil Shakur is going to be on the receiving end of a lot of those lost targets that Dawson Knox was able to get in his time with the Bills. And I think he's going to score a touchdown on Thursday night, and that'd be back-to-back touchdown bet winners for us here on Mac and JT. Khalil Shakur anytime touchdown on Thursday night.
I'm just writing down these bets in the chat so people know what you're advocating for, because you've been on a hot streak, Jacob, and the chat wants to know. They need to know. And here we go. Khalil Shakur, anytime touchdown. ATT. Jacob, I have a couple props I really like, but I also have a just game bet that I like if you can get it at this price. I like the under at 44.5. If you can get it at 44.5, I think it's at 43.5 right now. If you can get it at 44.5, the Buccaneers have only scored 21 points or more 2 times this season. And with the way that this team for the Bills has been trending, I think you're looking at a game that could possibly go like 17-24 or 14-27. Just like it could be a blowout, but it's not going to nearly reach that over mark. So I really like 44.5. I think that's a really solid number to go for. And then I don't know if you said this already, but Stephon Diggs receiving yards, I mean, that's pretty much a lock. I mean, we talked about how the Bucs have repeatedly given up 100 plus yards to the elite receivers that they've played against this year. That to me is a lock. And then something to look out for. Vita Vea is questionable right now. If he ends up being hurt and if he ends up sitting out, the Bucs interior defense is going to be in trouble. It's gonna be in trouble. So I have Josh Allen rushing touchdown anytime, and then maybe you sprinkle in some James Cook. I don't know. I didn't do too much research into that, but James Cook might be a play there too. And then
the one thing I would say with that is a lot of their goal line carries have been going to Latavius Murray. So if you're going to take an anytime touchdown score, I know Latavius Murray's odds are a little bit better than James Cook because he gets less carries, but a lot of those carries end up on the goal line.
Yeah, what Jacobs just said. See, I didn't do any research into that. He knows right then and there. And then my last one that I'm not very confident in this one because of how the season has gone for him, but Rachaad White over 45 yards rushing. And he's played top 10 defenses all season long. He doesn't get the ball much, but the Bills have been giving up 123 yards on the ground all season long. If he's going to make it over on his prop this season, it's going to be this game, especially with some of the injuries the Bills are dealing with. So that's my one bet I'm not super confident in. The others I feel pretty confident in. I like those chances. I like those odds.
I believe it or not, I had Rachaad White over 45 rushing yards written down on my prop list, and then I just couldn't bring myself to say it out loud on the show and bet on Rachaad White, so I took it off. But I'm glad you did. So I'll be taking that one with you. I like the Rachaad White yardage as well, but that's gonna be one when you want to hold your nose when you press submit on that bad boy, because that's a stinky bet with 45 yards. But I like it a lot. I think we have some winners here for the people again this week, Casey.
Yeah, I think we do too. I know you guys want to make some money on the side. This is a great way to do it. Just listen to Mac and JT.
Absolutely. Entertainment, and we pay the bills. Nothing better.
I don't know if we're legally allowed to say that, but we did. Oh well. Uh, this has been Mac and JT Week 8 edition. Yeah, Week 8's edition.
Week
Thank
eight,
you all.
flying by.
Thank you all for joining us. And if you want to know our bets, if you didn't have a chance to write them down, or if you don't feel like coming back and watching this, just shoot us a message on Discord and we'll answer it there. I've been Mac.
And I've been JT.
And this has been the Mac and JT show. Thank you for watching, everyone. We'll see you next week.